Let's see. We covered the strike is over story. What are we missing? Oh, we're missing my favorite character from time gone by, James Bond. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. There is a new, or potentially a new, James Bond film on the way, or two, from, as you saw from the picture, Mr. Nolan himself. Christopher Nolan is potentially being tapped to direct, to direct two, two, two James Bond films. Did I say Culture Casino films? Same thing. So it's quite possible. But what's the latest Christopher Nolan James Bond rumors? Well, according to a recent report from World of Real, citing an insider post on a forum, Nolan continues to be in talks to potentially direct two Bond films. The director would write both as well. However, the main sticking points in the ongoing discussions center around how much creative freedom Nolan is given on the films. The report mentions that Eon Productions, the production company behind the James Bond series, and Amazon continue to push for Nolan, and that Eon wants a full reboot of the modern era James Bond. However, Nolan would rather make adaptations of the Ian Fleming novels in period settings that stick close to the original source material. Well, of course, they're going to have a problem here. The goal is to get Nolan to do 2 to 3 films and then have him executive produce going forward, reads the report, while also noting that both Eon and Amazon are all in on the idea of Nolan directing the films. Rumors of Nolan directing multiple James Bond films began earlier this month when World of Real also reported that the director had met with longtime Bond producer Barbara Broccoli. That's the daughter of Albert Broccoli, and of course the Wilson family, which owns the other part of the Bond franchise. Interesting. What's funny is a lot of stories that were tangentially tied to this must have gotten some heat because this seemed to have disappeared. But I will ask you, gentlemen. I am a huge Bond fan. I will give you my opinion last. Andre, were you intrigued with the idea of Christopher Nolan directing future Bond projects?
Not until I heard what he wanted to do, that he wanted to do them literal adaptations of the books, period pieces. This is the one thing that you actually can do with James Bond in this day and age. So I say yes, make it so. Give him 100% creative control, because this is one of the cases where he actually has the right idea and the rights holders do not. So I'm fully with Nolan on this one. I want to see what he can do. This is the one thing that you can do with James Bond. Like, just face it, time has run out for that kind of spy movies as James Bond were. The world is no longer like that. There are no longer agents of that type. There are still agents, but not of that type. It's the only way that you can do it and do it right is to make it period pieces. And I'd love to see more period pieces like that. I mean, just look at like real life crime and stuff like that, and not just the world of there was like during the Cold War. That's war. That's when you had like spies running around and everything. And not only that, in the world of crime, that's where you had like really tough, hardened criminals who were hard men who could dish it out and take it, because that's who rose to the top of the criminal underworld then, as opposed to now when it's computer geeks and nerds. It's just not that interesting. There are
Right.
certain kinds of stories that belong in a certain time frame. And in this chicken shit era we are right now, you can't have something like James Bond. It can't be done right. You need to go period. So I say, now that I heard that, I'm Team Nolan all the way. Go Nolan.
Yeah, that's funny. That's roughly where I land. Nick, what do you think?
I love Christopher Nolan as a director. I like James Bond. I'm not the biggest James Bond fan, but so I don't know all the details about this, but from what Andre just said about him basically doing the book adaptations, uh, I wish Disney would have done that with the EU books, moving
Mhm.
forward when they took over. So in the book, a lot of people like the books out there. So I would definitely be down for checking out his version of James Bond for sure. I mean, I'd go see it.
I am right with you. And I look, to me, James Bond is of that era. He can only be of that era. And Andre accurately pointed out, we don't have people that do what James Bond does. We don't have people what Jason Bourne does. We don't have those people anymore. I mean, they may be out there, but they're very few and far between. We usually use commandos or other forms of special forces to do these kinds of things, and our intelligence networks are too reliant on electronics rather than
But
on
even
human.
those, a commando from 20, 30 years ago would beat the shit out of a commando today.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and that's the thing. And a special forces person, a commando, a true special forces commando back in the day, 30 years ago, or back when I considered it, 30 some years ago, those people, they're one man army. They're a one man destructive force, and
Exactly, and they're not that today, not in the same way.
they can
They have also been subjected to reduced requirements, and also you have all this diversity and stuff like that, even into those ranks right there. So even special forces have become. I mean, they're still the hardest of the hard by all means, but they're pussified compared to what they were.
Yeah. And it's a real shame, and it's something that it's something that those are days gone by, and perhaps we'll be there again. I guess the terms have always been the same. Weak times makes wait.
If I may,
Yeah, please.
good times produce weak men.
Yes,
Hard times
that's what it is.
produce strong men. Strong men produce good times, and then you have the whole circle going right there.
100%. And thank you.
And actually, sorry, carry on.
No, please.
If Nolan were to get his way, if he were to get a period piece done, and it was true to the novel, and in order for it to be true to the novel, you'd have a chain smoking Bond, you'd have a drinking Bond, you'd have you will have a Bond that will open his fist and bitch slap women who he don't like, as Sean Connery actually did in the earlier movies. It would be all kinds of problematic, and it's exactly what would be needed to kind of like get the culture back in a row again, to show this is not what you do, this is not acceptable in real life, but this is something you need to be able to have on screen in a thriving, healthy culture.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it would be wonderful. I think it's a bit of a pipe dream. But if it happens, I think we'll all be better off. The question is, will it happen? And based on the current ownership and how twisted Barbara Broccoli is, I don't know that this would actually be allowed.
This is the issue. This is what has me worried. Because what do you do when it's the owner of the property itself that is the problem? Like, for instance, why hasn't Carl Urban returned to play Judge Dredd anymore? It's the same thing. It's the right holder that is the problem.
True story. And the same thing that happened with Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Yeah.